I think it's safe to say that the pre-patch is a bit of a mess. Overly grindy endeavors, rather controversial class changes, the entire add-on situation, and a pre-patch event that honestly just feels like slop.
For the Twilight's blade!
In today's video, I want to go over what is going wrong with the pre-patch and also where we go from here for World of Warcraft. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls. And can these freaking rares spawn already, dude? This takes forever!
Will you stop touching me?
Okay, so let's start with the pre-patch event. So what even is it? Well, I play Horde, so you start out in Orgrimmar rooting out Twilight cultists for like one quest before you go immediately to the Twilight Highlands to do a very short quest chain where you infiltrate the Twilight's Blade, which takes all of like, I want to say 7 minutes. Then you kill them all, which takes another 3. And then the game gives you like 2 dailies or weeklies, which basically just involve going out to defeat rares and do certain world quests that are now there in the Twilight Highlands. That is it. I mean, there's like a tic-tac-toe board game in your main camp, right? Like you can do that. You actually have to do it for an achievement. Well, I say have to do it, right? The achievement doesn't even give you anything. It's just a feat of strength if you want it. This is the bad boy that's taking forever, though. 2 minutes to midnight. It gives you a title and a mount. Hold on, let me check my map for any rares. No, none have spawned yet. So, as you can see, there's a bunch of rares in the Twilight Highlands. One spawns on a cycle every 10 minutes. I think it's 10 minutes. It feels like 20, but it's more like 10. Ah, there it is. Red Eye the Skull Chew. I haven't done this one yet. So you just head on over here. You disrupt the ritual, which basically just means kill some cultists, then you'll have to kill these 3 ritualists, then the actual rare spawns, and then you beat that guy. And that's basically it. There's like one rare that bucks this trend and just kind of is doing its own thing, but besides that, all the other rares are basically just this. Rinse, repeat. Mind you, the achievement involves doing all of these. So if you miss one, have fun waiting a long time because they go on a cycle. So now the rare's actually here, so we just like DPS him, get out of the AoE. I don't want to die to a freaking world rare. That would be a bit sad. So we just like hit some buttons because it's pre-patch. We'll talk about class changes later. Get the kill. I get 3 Valor Stones. Woohoo. I got 1 Twilight's Blade insignia, some crests and residence stones or crystals, whatever. And now we go back to play the waiting game. It's a magical game called I have to wait like another 10 minutes for the next rare to spawn. And I have to hope to God that I didn't miss one. I don't think I have, but I gotta really hope that I didn't. I am only down to 6, so like another hour of this and I'll be done. But yeah, like this is the pre-patch event. It's just kind of bland. It's just an excuse to have a bunch of world quests and rares in the Twilight Highlands. There's barely a story here. It's like you get a little bit of banter between Umbric and Romoth, and they at this point really just feel like a sitcom with like bad roommates. That's the exact energy they give off. And there's nothing really interesting or even satisfying about the pre-patch event. And for what is supposed to lead us into midnight, it doesn't have that pizzazz. It doesn't have that cool factor. It doesn't really have any teeth to it at all. I mean, the rewards are kind of cool. The dailies are the things that give you the most resources here. The Twilight's Blade insignias. Just farming rares aren't going to give you a lot of these. But this is basically your catch-up gear. So if you have an alt or like a character left over from Legion Remix, you want to try them out a bit, or you're doing what I'm doing and you're sniping gear here in order to get tier appearances by upgrading it, which is what I'm trying to do because I want this set. It's an okay way to snipe a few good pieces. You're not going to be really like grinding a full set without your brain melting out of your ear from sheer boredom, right? And then the other vendor, the Void Elf one, has more cosmetic stuff. Bunch of different armaments, which I think the weapons look fine. They look pretty cool. You get a cultist attire, which again looks fine. Some housing decor. I know it's a reskin mount, but look, it looks pretty dang cool. And especially if you don't already have one of these, I'm definitely gonna pick one of these up. A bootleg Undermine minion, a Spore, Mr. Wiggles over here, like one toy, and then a tablet. There's not that much going on here. There just isn't. Is that necessarily a problem? Probably not. Midnight is right around the corner, and I imagine most people care more about the expansion than the pre-patch event, right? But this does kind of feel like a casualty of Blizzard working on Midnight and all the system changes that Midnight are bringing to the table, or is bringing to the table, alongside we just wrapped up Legion Remix. So the pre-patch event feels like an afterthought compared to everything else that is like bookending this. This is definitely one of the more bleh pre-patches I've ever seen them do. And this definitely feels like the moment Midnight launches, nobody's going to remember this. Like, you can play tic-tac-toe, like I said. It's like right here. There's one in the Alliance camp as well. You just pick which marker you want. I'll go Horde. And then you play tic-tac-toe, and I guess my vision's obstructed here because, as we all know, the pre-patch has been absolutely bug-free. This is intended totally. Go there, because the AI can be stupid. And look, I won. Sick. You do that 50 times, you get an achievement. So yeah, the pre-patch event kind of sucks, but I guess this gives us a decent opportunity to actually talk about things like the add-on changes and also the class redesigns. Here's my 2 cents when it comes to like the class redesigns.
Will you stop touching me?
So here's where I'm coming from when it comes to the class changes. I'm not someone who mythic raids. I'm not someone that does a bunch of high-end content. There are plenty of other people out there that are far more qualified to speak on these class changes from that perspective than I. Where I'm coming from is simply, is it fun and enjoyable to press my buttons? And yeah, of the classes and specs that I've played, I still enjoy pressing my buttons in World of Warcraft. And the ones that I've tried out are mainly things like Ret Paladin, Unholy DK, Devourer Demon Hunter, Arms Warrior, Elemental Shaman, and also a very little bit of like Fury Warrior. I still enjoy pressing my buttons. I do find myself missing some of the buttons that used to be there, or I find myself in a position where I'm like, I really wish I had like 1 or 2 more buttons here, mainly for things like utility, particularly on like Elemental Shaman for me, but still, I like playing the game still. It's just ordinarily when you go into an expansion, you expect to get something big and new and flashy. Midnight just doesn't really have that. I think they want Apex talents to be that. And from what I've seen of them, yeah, like some of them it can be kind of cool, but like, come on, right? Like in the lead up to the War Within, how cool was it to have heard about Templar raining hammers down from the sky? Are there problems with hero talents? Absolutely. You will not hear an argument from me about that. But dude, some of these are really dang cool. And Midnight just doesn't really have anything like that. Some people won't mind that, and for other people, I think it just means they won't be as excited for Midnight as they were for previous expansions. I think what Blizzard are really trying to do here with Midnight, though, is kind of soft reset the game in a way. Not fully, just walk it back a few paces. Things like these class changes and things like the add-on Apocalypse that we have right now really feel like them trying to soft reset some elements of the game. And I agree, the game was very bloated. It was extremely complicated, especially for a new player to try to understand everything that was going on. A lot of us take for granted just how many years of experience that we have with World of Warcraft, to where a lot of these various systems end up making sense, or we're at least somewhat familiar with them because we've been exposed to them for so long. And if World of Warcraft wants to grow, it has to not only satisfy the current player base that it does have, which is important by the way, but it also needs to find a way to position itself in such a way to where it's not too daunting to recruit new players to the game. And I think it is safe to say that up until now, and I wouldn't even say that really particularly perfect with that here, they were too daunting. It was like the game itself was too intimidating. It's one of the reasons I think they completely changed up the new play experience. Is it perfect? No. But is it probably better than what it was before? Yeah, absolutely. You actually get a coherent story. Is that story particularly great? No. But at least it's coherent now. Like, that's a plus. And I think another thing when it comes to the class changes for Midnight in the pre-patch, it is the pre-patch. These classes and specs are designed for level 90 endgame. We're not there right now. We don't have access to all of the talent points we would ordinarily be able to put in. We don't have access to the Apex talents. Sure, it might not completely move the needle for everybody, but I imagine it would move the needle somewhat for some people. It's important to just like keep that in the back of our minds as we're talking about the state of the game for a game state that's not going to really exist a month from now. Does that make the pre-patch better? No, but it does mean it's on a deadline, and a deadline that is rapidly approaching. It's only going to stay this way for a little bit of time.
Will you stop touching me?
And when it comes to the whole add-on situation, the fear that many people had, that many people could see coming a mile away, ended up happening. Is it a noble thing to try to remove things like weak auras from the game equation because they put far too much power in the hands of the player? Yeah, sure. Was it healthy for the game to be like that? I would argue no. And I think in the long run, the game will be better off without that kind of stuff. However, when you have a culture of players that have normalized add-on usage for so long, that are fine with add-ons, largely speaking, maybe not things like weak auras, but being able to customize your UI to fit your own preferences has been something in this game since time immemorial. People have crafted their UI to fit their preferences down to the pixel. When you alter that and throw a wrench in the gears, that's going to upset people naturally. Again, in the long run, will things work themselves out? Probably. But that doesn't mean in the short term that it feels good. You can just go on places like Twitter and just find endless amounts of people complaining about things like buff and debuff filtering. Heck, if you play the game and you use the in-game damage meter, it's garbage. For like a very specific reason as well that I hope is a bug that will be addressed. Why does it store data from my previous dungeon run going into the next? Bro, put that someplace else automatically. I don't care what the damage some random shaman did in my previous dungeon was. I just don't care about that when I'm in the current dungeon. Yes, I can reset the data by clicking a button. I shouldn't have to do that. That's annoying. And if this was PTR or beta, that would be one thing. Be like, hey, this is an issue. Can you guys like fix this? Sure, that would be one thing. This is live. There's a different standard. This is the live retail version of the game. It shouldn't feel like another PTR. And pre-patch, in my opinion, shouldn't feel like just a glorified wider beta test for Midnight. It's another consequence, in my opinion, of this 8-week content cycle rearing its ugly head. Because either they don't know what they're doing, which I don't even believe to be the case, or they just simply don't have sufficient time and or resources dedicated to addressing these things because they're so focused on pumping out content quickly out the door. And yeah, this game has a subscription. Trying to get as much content out the door to satisfy your consumer base, to me, that's a noble goal. But when the content is just like this, and it's basically glorified slop, is that fun and engaging? I would argue no. Are Blizzard's priorities where they should be right now? I would argue somewhat, but not fully. I think a lot of people have a legitimate critique here when it comes to things like Void Elf Demon Hunters. There's clearly like a lack of effort there compared to things like Haranir. And Haranir, in my opinion, aren't even like that interesting. They're fine. I think Haranir as a zone looks really dang cool, but the Haranir just in quite a few ways in terms of feel and aesthetic. I know we're talking about more about like Midnight here, but still, they feel like that Warcraft 3 version of Night Elves people have wanted in World of Warcraft for so long. It's kind of funny. Brief aside there, well, aside, but still, I think Blizzard internally needs to have an honest to God conversation about their priorities and what they're focused on. When you're going to do something like the add-on apocalypse, you have to make sure the in-game systems meant to replace quite a few of those features people have become reliant on or just used to. You have to make sure they're at least up to snuff and that glaring flaws aren't there when we get to retail, when we get to live. It's a bad look. Pre-patches when people are supposed to be excited for the next expansion. Waiting around for a bunch of rares with classes that feel either roughly the same or lesser versions of themselves after having to spend a non-insignificant amount of time reconfiguring my UI because of the add-on changes to only do a grind involving a bunch of rares that all basically play and feel the same in a zone that is severely laggy because it's World of Warcraft. We have more than 4 people on the screen, so the game can barely keep up. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't instill excitement or optimism for the current game state, let alone breeds excitement for the next giant chapter for World of Warcraft with Midnight. And Midnight should be like an absolute home run. There's so many great and cool elements to it that I hope they're able to nail. This doesn't set us up to be excited for any of that though. And I think it's a crying shame. And I think this is something that Blizzard has to look at. They have to look at the man in the mirror and say, how did we get here? How do we get away from here? Those are 2 questions I think Blizzard needs to address internally and find viable both long and also short-term solutions for.
Will you stop touching me?
Hey, good news though, I only have 2 rares left, so soon I'll be out of that Twilight hell. But here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the pre-patch and the current direction for World of Warcraft. What do you really like about it, but also what do you think they need to prioritize and change, fix, or just completely throw in the dumpster? I would love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps up support for your content, and I greatly appreciate it. And you may be going, Jmulls, what about endeavors? They're a snore. What is this giant grind attached to housing? Well, yeah, I think this system has a lot of potential, but it's clear in its first iteration, this ain't it. And I go into way more detail about the issues with endeavors in this video you should check out right here. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.